Hello everybody and welcome to the Cube Vanguard. Today I'm not going to be talking about Kubernetes. Instead, I'm going to be talking about Veeam 12.1. Yes, this week Veeam 12.1 was released, and in my opinion, it is truly a revolutionary release. Now, you know me, I'm not Mr. Marketer or the salesperson of the year. I don't like to bloat things. I don't like to make things up and, say, oh, this is great every single time. Because I know that if you say it's great every single time, guess what? That becomes the norm. This, though, is different. This release truly has some revolutionary aspects to it. And most importantly, these are linked to fighting ransomware and malware. Okay, so the biggest threats recently to our data has been malware, ransomware. Okay, this is costing businesses a lot of money. Sometimes it's even wiping out businesses. So the previous methods of fighting this or countering this just don't work well enough. So Veeam has introduced some, I wouldn't even call them extras. I'd call them now essential pieces of this fight against ransomware. Okay, so you want to keep your existing setup. You need your antivirus, you need whatever systems, other systems you have in place. But Veeam is now adding additional help to combat ransomware. And it's essential because what sometimes people forget is backups at the end of the day are what save you from ransomware. Okay, so let's take a look right now at my top picks for the Veeam 12.1 release. And as I said before, they're all linked to ransomware or ransomware detection. I'll put my glasses on and let's get my list out, which I have down here. So if we go to, there's my screen. Here are the release notes, which you can get at Veeam. I download them locally, but they are located here at this link. If you can see that, veeam.com, Veeam Backup 12.1, what's new, okay? And I will list from 1 to 9 my favorite things. Not necessarily in that order as far as importance, but things that I thought really stuck out. So number 1 on my list, if we go right down, is let's see it, major new features. So the inline malware detection, okay? Truly revolutionary because as I understand it, it's going to watch your backup stream, okay? And it will be able to detect malware in the stream. Now, one thing I'll point out here right away, and it does mention this as well, obviously you're going to want to have powerful backup proxies for this because the backup proxy, is working very hard as it is with backups. Now the CPU is going to be even more intensely used if this is enabled, okay? Because it needs CPU to monitor. So that's one thing, monitor the stream. That's one thing you might want to think about is adding some CPU or more powerful proxies, okay? But apart from that, there's no additional requirements to install. You don't have to add anything else. It's already there, okay? Wonderful. Next, so that's the first line, I'd say, the actual backup stream, okay? The backup's being built, so to speak. It's going to try to detect it there. Then there's the suspicious file system activity detection, okay? This is your backups at rest. It's going to try and detect ransomware, malware there. Now, for this, there is a caveat. You have to enable guest file indexing, okay? Now, you might have had this enabled anyways for a file server because it would help you do all sorts of things like search and whatnot, but you cannot use this suspicious file activity detection unless you've got indexing enabled, so keep that in mind. Then there's the early threat detection. Truly pretty wild, as I can say. Pretty wild. It's wild if you get hit by ransomware. It's not wild if you don't. So it's very cool, put it that way. And this is a new Veeam Incident API, okay, which makes it easier for external EDR tools like NDR, MDR, XDR to notify the backup server of infections at earlier attack stages, okay? This is fantastic because what it's going to do is these systems, which hopefully are already present in your environment or you might want to introduce them, will tell the backup server, oh, there's a problem. And then the VBR server can mark as infected all the backups after that particular time. Okay, really important because I've seen this myself in my practice as a disaster recovery expert. Customers restoring from backups after being hit by ransomware, they're all happy, open the champagne bottles, and a week later they get hit again. Why? Because the malware was in the backup that they used. Okay, there was no way to detect it. It was sleeping. They call it sleeping malware. So this will help with that. Okay, and so also help Veeam create out-of-band restore points. Okay, so out-of-band, which I'm assuming means like out of the chain, outside of it. Okay, we'll have to look into that. Remember, go through these release notes, but then if there's an area you need to focus on, you got to go to the documentation. You can't avoid it. No shortcuts here. Okay, so my next point, and this is quite funny, is Yara. Okay, scan your backups with Yara. And at the Veeam 100 Summit in Prague, all the Veeam engineers and the Veeam 100 people like myself, the Vanguards and Legends, had a lot of fun with this word Yara. It reminds me of YAML. Right, YAML and DevOps, but it's Yara. And what these things are is they help you that once a malware strain has affected your system and it's been identified, you can use these to pinpoint these malware elements in your backups with Yara rules, okay? So they'll allow you to quickly find and clean restore points, okay? Wonderful. So you remember that Veeam introduced a while back the ability to do staged restores, secure restores, which meant that you could actually go into your backups and remove things, okay? Well, Yara will make this basically programmable, as understandable. So one thing to keep in mind here, this is only available if you have Veeam Data Protection Advanced Platform Premium Editions only, okay? So keep that in mind, all right? Next, further down, event forwarding, okay? This is really important as well because you might have a SIM system, and this basically will now allow syslog support so you can forward events to your SIM system, which is keeping track of all this, all right? Okay, my next personal point is the 4 eyes authorization, which is wonderful. What it means that if you want to make certain changes, I don't know if all changes, but you'll have to read that in documentation, you need 4 eyes. You need 2 people, okay? Which is, when you think about it, excellent because insider protection, okay? If there's a disgruntled employee, didn't get my raise, I'm going to delete all the backups. Well, guess what? You can't do it. You need to have the second person. So as long as there's 2 disgruntled administrators, you're okay. Joking aside, though, it is a really excellent protection. One caveat, at least now, in the early stages. Don't enable this unless you've already added another administrator to your VBR. Because guess what? You've only got 2 eyes. Unless, you're some kind of Martian, you got 4, you're going to be in trouble because you won't be able to do anything. You'll have to phone Veeam support. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Okay, further down, there's a lot more here, but other things of note, backup object storage. So actually backing up object storage. All the talk recently is about, backing up to object storage. So target your object storage repositories. This means you can actually back up object storage. So remember, object storage is used for many things, and it's great for keeping files and things like that. So just like a NAS or something of that nature, you can now back it up. In fact, I think the backup is done in a similar way. Again, let's go back to the documentation. My next point, which, I'll find it down here somewhere. There it is. The Veeam AI Assistant. So, okay, AI is everywhere, big thing. I would personally be careful of this. Don't stop studying yourself. So don't start to totally rely on AI. Don't let AI drive your car and you don't know how to drive. That's not a good idea. So what this is an excellent helper, as they claim here, assistant. But you, the backup administrator, still need to be in the driver's seat. You have to know what's going on. Don't be lazy. Don't just say, create me a backup, whatever, the best one possible. And then after 2 years, you have no clue how to create a backup. Because it is still early stages. And I personally think that we never want to give up our human control over any of these things. Just my opinion. I've watched enough horror movies, okay? All right. And last but not least, and this is something I think it's further way down there. So I don't even know if it's, we go find it, is the backup of the configuration file. Now, what do I mean by that? And I'll just switch out of this scene to my face again. As you know, there are backup configuration files in Veeam which hold the crown jewels of your VBR server. So if you encrypt them, they have all your passwords, the policies, all sorts of things. And what they allow you to do is if your Veeam server, for instance, just breaks down physically or is irreparable, if you have this somewhere, you can create a brand new Veeam server, Veeam software, in a Veeam server, obviously, and you can but you can restore this file, and then all your settings will be there. Obviously, if you're a small organization, you've got 5 backup jobs, whatnot, okay, no big deal. But if it's a big organization, you don't want to spend like 3 days rebuilding everything you had, especially from your documentation. And if you don't have documentation, then you've got to do it on the fly. Much easier to restore your backup file. Obviously, the threats are looking at these things too, and one of the things that was happening was the backup configuration file was being encrypted too. Okay, so now this can be also made immutable, and the bad guys can't touch it. All right, well, that is my take on Veeam 12.1. Excellent new release. I congratulate Veeam on this. It's going to really help data protection people who are doing this every single day and need all the tools they can get. And most importantly, it's going to protect all of us and all of our data. All right, thank you very much. And we will see you next time on the Cube Vanguard. By the way, I'm using a new system here to record, as you can tell. And I keep looking at my phone because I'm using the remote control. So that's why I keep looking down. It's not like I'm looking at my mouse or something. So keep that in mind. I'll get better at this as I go along. Thank you. Bye-bye.